Spoiler warning for RWBY Volume 3's finale. So if you don't want to be spoiled, click off now.
Previously, David reviewed Volume 3 of RWBY and was forced by Agent Zareth to go to his location to review the finale. And now, the continuation.
Alright, Zareth, I'm here.
Excellent. Now then, as I said, you will have to review the finale with two people who didn't like the finale as much as you did. Do that, and you go free. Now then, let's begin.
Well, I honestly didn't expect this to happen. But I guess since we're all here and all, let's talk about the Volume 3 finale.
Sounds good.
Listen, I was once a fan of the show. Maybe not as much of a fan in comparison to the two of you, but still a fan. But when I saw this finale, it was executed so poorly and angered me so much due to it leaving more questions than answers, that I dropped the series after this point.
Really?
Yes, so even if Volume 4 answered a few of my questions, it's too little too late for me. That is why I'm not looking forward to covering this episode.
Okay, fair enough. Let's begin.
So after the events of episode 11, where Amber was killed by Cinderfall, we start off the episode with a fight scene between Ozpin and Cinder?
Wait, her name is Amber? Shit, I called her Autumn in that review. Also, holy crap, is the Headmaster actually fighting? This is awesome!
Fuck yeah! Coming again to save the motherfucking day, yeah!
I know, right? We get to see a glimpse of what Ozpin can do, and we see that with the full power of the Fall main, Cinder's fire attacks are even stronger than before.
This is amazing!
And it ends in 30 seconds.
Are you serious? Why would you spend several episodes building him up to do something big during this attack on Beacon, and then have the payoff be a short fight and have it end off screen?
Yeah, I'll be coming back to this later, but for now, I'm just gonna continue the synopsis. So after that awesome but short fight, we cut over to the remains of Beacon Academy, where Oobleck and Peterport are trying to evacuate all the students to Vale, and dear my god, these guys aren't looking too good. Nora and Lee-Ren are injured and can't fight, Blake's down for the count, the other students are weakened due to the fight with the Mech and Grimm, and Yang lost her hand thanks to Adam in a previous episode.
Perfect. Another arm to add to my collection.
But when Ruby realizes that Jean and Pierre aren't there, she decides to go off and find them herself.
But Ruby's not gonna do this alone. Weiss, the same girl who didn't like Ruby in the beginning of the series, volunteers to help her find them, and the two run off. So after Jean and Pierre escape the vault, they hear the tower behind them rumbling, and with them fearing for the worst, that being Ozpin losing, Pyrrha makes a big sacrifice and goes back in there. Jean tries to stop her, but Pyrrha, determined to try and stop Cinder herself, kisses Jean before shoving him into a pod that sends him away from the area.
What? After 3 volumes, these two finally kissed.
I know, right?
Shippers.
Mark, this ship is going to crash soon, okay? Let us enjoy this moment while we still can.
So inside Ozpin's office, Cinder walks in and makes eye contact with the Grimm dragon and communicates with it. How?
I agree. How can she do this?
Well, as we see in Volume 4, she is working with someone who may or may not be tied with the Grimm, and we did see her use the spider Grimm-like creature earlier in the series, so maybe she has an associate that taught her how?
Still doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and even then, that's just a guess, David.
At least I bothered to back up my claim. So the two have their fight, and I gotta admit, this was a pretty damn good last stand for Pyrrha. She threw everything she had at Cinder and gave it her all, even after losing her weapons for a brief moment in the fight.
No, just no. Why did this get more attention than the Ozpin fight? Seriously, this fight is 3 minutes long while the Ozpin fight is 30 seconds long. And how is it that Pyrrha could last longer than Ozpin when he fought Cinder? Just why?
It's later. First off, Mark, we don't know if it was 30 seconds in real time. Remember, this fight had a lot of jump cuts in between actions, so it's very much likely that the fight lasted a while. Hell, it must have taken some time since Jean and Pierre were able to get out of the vault and make it back to the entrance to the tower before it began to crumble. Because I don't care how fast elevators are in this world, but that could not have been 30 seconds for them to make it to the elevator and make it back to the entrance. It just seems impossible. And second of all, this is Pyrrha's last stand, so of course it's going to get more attention, because this is her last fight. Ozpin, as we later see in Volume 4, survives his encounter with Cinder. Pyrrha, on the other hand, doesn't. Hence why she gets more attention in this fight than Ozpin did in his fight.
Still doesn't negate my point that she lasted longer than Ozpin.
Yeah, I'm just gonna continue the review. So while the fight is going on, Cinder commands the Grim Dragon to attack the tower, and she succeeds, destroying the top of it and effectively shutting down all communications in Vale. After this, Cinder overpowers Pyrrha, while Ruby, with help from Weiss, runs up the tower to see what happens next. Cinder shoots Pyrrha through the heart and incinerates her, one of my favorite characters in this series, and part of one of my favorite ships is now dead.
Shot through the heart and
Shut up, David!
dick.
This was, in my opinion, one of the worst moments of the episode. Pyrrha's death could have been avoided if this stupid maiden plot wasn't brought in early on in the volume. And as a shipper of Pyrrha and Jean, this death also infuriated me, because now that ship is sunk, and the fact that they did kiss moments before her death only serves to make the blow much harder for me to take in. Why did they make this stupid maiden's plot in the first place? Seriously. It essentially plagued half of this volume, which was already crowded, mind you, and it forced Pyrrha to deal with a tacked-on destiny. This is awful!
Well then, as for me, while I did feel sad that Pyrrha died, I also understood why it had to happen, to show that not even those close to the main cast were safe. It showed that no one was safe in the series now. They showed it with Penny, they showed it with Roman, and they showed it here. On top of that, this death also helped with developing other characters as shown with Volume 4, and it did help with opening up a lot more character arcs for the cast. I have said this before, but it bears repeating. If a character's death ends up helping the show more than hurting it, then I am okay with the character dying.
Well, regardless of what you think of Pyrrha's death, this causes RWBY to activate a new power which completely covers the area in white, possibly incinerates Cinder and the Grim Dragon, and then we cut to white noise. You know, there's a word for something like this.
I think I know that word as well.
Deus Ex Machina!
I mean, seriously, there is no better way to describe it. It comes right out of nowhere, and it stops the crisis just like that.
Now, yes, we later find out that the Grim Dragon is frozen and not killed, but it still doesn't erase the fact that this came right out of nowhere and stopped the events on the tower.
Exactly. Oh, and before anyone tries to argue that it didn't come out of nowhere since Ozpin made a comment about it, I will happily point out that it was only mentioned once throughout the entire series up to this point, and it was in Volume 1's first episode. This was never mentioned again until this episode. This is not how you build up to something.
I do have to agree, it's really poor writing to make a mention of Ruby's Silver Eyes in the beginning of the series, and then never mentioned again until Volume 3. There's build-up, and then there's pulling things out of your behind because you wrote yourself into a corner. And the fact that this sun power-up saved the day makes it much more infuriating.
I know, right? So David, what do you have to say to that? Are you going to try and defend this too?
No. While I will somewhat question the use of the term Deus Ex Machina, since at the end of the day Beacon still falls to the Grim, I will agree that it did come out of nowhere. Mounty had 2 volumes to build this up, and if the rumors were true that he made plans up to the 7th volume, then he should have gone back to Volume 2 before production had begun on it and added in some build-up, or at least mentioned it. You know, so that it's relevant to the series and not an offhand comment Ozpin made, but I do agree with you two. This was a poor way to wrap up the fight, since the whole Silver Eyes was only brought up as a comment once, and it was in the beginning of the series.
Okay, so after the white light, RWBY wakes up in her home and we get a huge exposition dump from her uncle explaining that Ozpin's whereabouts are unknown, the dragon is somehow frozen but is still able to attract the Grim to the remains of Beacon Academy, tells Ruben that she is special due to the silver eyes that her mother also had, and also explains that they are destined to lead the life of a warrior, and that the Grim fear those eyes. He will have to continue Ozpin's work, and finally explains that his investigations led him all the way to Haven. Seriously guys, we lost the Ozpin fight for this exposition dump? Pathetic.
To make things worse, we find out from Yang that Weiss got essentially dragged away by her father to her home of Atlas, and Blake ran off. Are you kidding me? Look, I hate Adam Taurus as much as I hate Alteria's, but he made a good point about Blake always running away. The girl made a promise to Yang earlier in the series, and I would understand why she would leave out of guilt, since she felt horrible about what happened to Yang, and wasn't able to help her during that incident. But it wasn't out of guilt. The girl ran away because she was a scaredy cat.
I get it.
Shut up, David. This was a major blow to her character for me, and the fact that she ran away and abandoned her friends because she was scared is infuriating to me, not only because I was a fan of this character, but also because it strengthens Adam's point about Blake always running away. When I have to agree with the bad guy with no redeemable qualities, you know someone screwed up big time. So we get a bit of a time jump to the winter season, and we see RWBY leave her home with the remains of Team Juniper as they head off to Haven.
But before the volume can conclude, we get introduced to the woman who was occasionally giving narration throughout the series and the narrator for the first volume of World of Remnants Salem.
Who is completely unnecessary to this finale. Seriously, why is she here? Especially without explanation or reason. Then that's it. That's it for the season finale. Sorry, Pierre and Blake fans. Enjoy your several-month hiatus. But don't worry, we got this abysmal comedy series to keep you waiting, because that's clearly what everyone wanted to see.
So, I take it you two hated it?
Yes! The Deus Ex Machina was awful. There were so many questions raised by this episode that weren't answered, like how Cinder could talk to the dragon, or how could she even access the vault. The exposition dump was terribly executed, the treatment of the characters was awful, Pyrrha's death was awful, and the fact that her fight scene got more attention than Ozpin's is still infuriating. Ozpin's fight was awful. This was a terrible finale, and I meant what I said in my topic sense. The season finale was so terrible, it made me drop RWBY altogether, and even if Volume 4 does manage to answer some of the questions this finale presented, the damage has already been done.
Despite my complaints with this episode, I didn't hate this finale. Contrary to what Zareth over there told you, I felt Cinder was a decent antagonist, and certainly dominated in this finale, to the point of being pretty much OP at points. I felt that it was a decent transition to the darker tones Volume 4 presents, and even Pyrrha's death did a good job opening up new character arcs for characters like Jean, as we see in Volume 4's second episode. So while I do have my issues with this finale, I did genuinely enjoy it.
Okay. And as for me, I felt it was a good finale. It was a good transition to Volume 4's darker tone. I like that the conflict didn't end on a happy note, since it opens up potential storylines in the future where they have to stop the Grim Dragon again when they're much stronger, as well as other story ideas. I like the reveal of Salem at the end, and I like the change to the status quo the first two volumes had. So overall, a great end to a great volume of this show. And I think it's time to wrap this up. So take care everyone, and have a happy holidays. Guys, if we're done.
Yes, you managed to complete my challenge. Very well, you three may leave.
Why even do this in the first place? Seriously, why kidnap Andrew and Mark?
Because I wanted to see the full power of the Red Lantern. So I decided to capture two of your colleagues and threaten you like that to get you upset, to get you angry, to activate your Red Lantern abilities. But you didn't do that. You surpassed my expectations, and because of that, I see no reason to continue this plan any further. Mark and Andrew, your rings allow you to teleport, so just use those to go home.
Okay, but what is your end goal? What do you get out of this?
Short answer, to test out the power of the Seven Lantern Guardians of this world. The long answer, I can't say just yet. But until then, I will bid you adieu.